Good morning. My name is Scott Helmers, and welcome to Automating Process Maps. I'm going to show you how you can enter data in Excel and have Visio automatically create process maps for you. So to give you an idea of where we're headed, this is what you'll see to start with. This is data in Excel. You'll notice there is one row of data for each step in a process. And we've defined some characteristics about that process on each line. And then we click a button or two, and we end up with something like this, a swim lane diagram or a flowchart. And it does happen automatically, as you'll see in just a couple of seconds. My plan for the next 45 minutes is to show you ways that you can create diagrams automatically. So while a lot of what you're hearing in the sessions today during the conference are about automating the steps in a process to get work done, what I want to show you is how you can use Excel and Visio to automate the creation of a process map. Because unless you have a process well defined, what are you going to automate? You really need to understand the process before you can truly automate the steps in the process. So we're going to talk about using Visio to create diagrams from data. We'll see that the data and the diagrams are actually synchronized, so you can make changes in either place in order to update the other. We'll look at how you can create a custom data visualizer template. Data visualizer is the name of the capability that lives in current versions of Excel and Visio, and how you can use that template to make it available across your organization. I'll even show you a way that you can start in Excel. My initial approach will be to start in Visio, but you can actually start in Excel and do very much the same thing. And there's an even trickier way to do it that you don't even need a Visio license in order to create a Visio diagram inside Excel. Stay tuned. We'll get to that. And then if there's time permitting, and in this relatively short session today, I don't think there will be, but there might be time to show you a little bit about some data visualization techniques in Visio. Most likely what will happen is I'll just refer you to the couple of slides I have that point you to where to get more information about using Visio for visualizing data in general, not just process data. And then I have a couple of slides that have links to Visio resources. And by the way, if you're interested in copies of the slides, you can send email to me. My email address is here on this slide, scott@visiostepbystep.com. I'll be happy to provide a PDF copy of the slides. Quick background about me. I am a partner at a consulting firm based in the Boston area, so I'm up very early in my morning here, called the Harvard Computing Group. We are a process-focused firm, so most of what we do is helping clients define business processes, map business processes, design new business processes. Along the way, we created a Visio add-in called TaskMap, T-A-S-K-M-A-P, taskmap.com, that provides for a very specific data-rich style of process map that we've been using with our clients since about 2004. I am also a senior instructor at NetMind, a company that many of you, regardless of location, may know. They have European offices in Barcelona and Madrid, and I work and teach for the U.S. operation that's based just outside of Atlanta in Georgia. I also have developed half a dozen courses about Visio for LinkedIn Learning. So you'll find that link or this link on the screen, the bit.ly link, LI Learning-author, will take you to a catalog of my courses. And I've also written a number of books about Visio. They are available in multiple languages. I've also been named an MVP for Visio by Microsoft each year since 2008, for which I'm very grateful because it's plugged me into a community of Visio experts around the world that's unparalleled in providing knowledge to people in the community. And that's enough about me. Let's get into it. I want to talk about and show you how to demonstrate for you how to create process diagrams automatically from data. The key to what I'm going to show you today is Visio Plan 2. Visio is available in 3 ways now, if you want to think of it that way. There's the traditional desktop version of Visio, Visio 2013, Visio 2016, Visio 2019. Those are the perpetually licensed versions. You pay Microsoft money once and you're done. You own the license to that product perpetually. And then there are the subscription versions. They are not included with Office 365. Visio and Project have always been licensed separately, and they still are. But there is Visio Plan 1, which is a minimalist approach. It's browser-based. It allows you to create true Visio diagrams in any browser on any device. And then Visio Plan 2, which is that plus the same basic capabilities that have always been in the perpetual version of Visio, perpetually licensed version of Visio, plus some extra stuff. And it's the extra stuff that Data Visualizer falls into the category. So these are new capabilities only in Visio Plan 2 that I'm going to show you today. You'll find these special templates they're marked as Data Visualizer. So there's a basic flowchart template, a swim lane diagram template, and an audit diagram template that are marked Data Visualizer. And I'll show you those in Visio in just a second. Each of them also comes with a companion Excel template, and it's that template that lets you enter the data that will then become a diagram. I love the templates that the Visio and Excel teams worked together to create. They are very self-instructional. You really don't need to go anywhere else to find what you need, to learn what you need to create diagrams from data. So here on one tab is an overview, the 3 main steps. Add your process data into Excel, import it into Visio, and the result is a diagram. The second tab has more detailed instructions and even includes sample data and what that data is going to look like inside your diagram in a diagram when you turn it into a diagram. So it's a great learning tool, as I said. And then there's a tab that's formatted to have you enter the data you need in order to create a diagram. This is what the data might look like. And I'll show you this in Excel in just a second, so I'm not going to spend much time here other than to say that you need to have a unique identifier for each row of data. That's the process number column, and a description. That description is the text that will appear on each box within your flowchart or swim lane diagram. You also need to tell Visio what happens after each step. So in this case, we're saying after process step 100, the next step is 101. After 101, 102, and so forth. Those are the required fields. Those 3 are the bare minimum. With only those 3, Visio can create a diagram for you. However, it's often useful to provide additional information like what words should be on the connectors leading from one shape to another. Especially for decision shapes, it's useful to have yes, no, or accepted, rejected, whatever words describe that flow within your process. You also may want to tell Data Visualizer which shape to use for each of the rows of data in your diagram. And those shape names, where it says shape type, those match exactly to the familiar flowchart shapes that you see inside Visio. So that's what you see on the left is the Visio stencil, and in the middle of this page are the shape types. So that's helpful information. And then optional information is any other data that you want to include about each step in the process. So let's see what this looks like. I'm going to start with a simple case. Here is data that I've put into the template, and I've got a step number, 100, 110, 120, and so forth, descriptions, and the IDs. Again, those first 3 columns are the only ones that are actually required. But I've also got some additional information here, including taking advantage of the drop-down built into the Excel template that lets me tell Visio and Excel which shape type from the Visio diagram I want to apply to this step in the process. And then the green column headings are the optional additional information I'm choosing to provide, including costs and dates and so forth. So that's the data. Let's go to Visio now. Here in Visio, I'm on the new page, and just to prove a point, I'm going to click on Account first, and notice I am using Microsoft Visio Plan 2. So if you have Visio 2019 or Visio 2016 or 2013, you will not see the templates I'm about to show you. But with Visio Plan 2, you're all set. I'm going to select Templates, and this is the familiar set of templates for anyone who's used Visio. I also have a folder full of task map templates. That's the Visio add-in my company makes that I mentioned in passing a moment ago. But in particular, let's go to the flowchart category. And now, in addition to the templates that you're familiar with, here is the data visualizer audit diagram template, the flowchart, basic flowchart template, and the cross-functional flowchart template. I'm going to select basic flowchart data visualizer. When I click once, I get the preview information here that includes a link that says Excel data template. So when you install Visio Plan 2, it installs desktop components that include the software itself and a bunch of templates. Nothing unusual about that. But now, in addition to Visio templates, we also have Excel templates for these three diagram types. I'm not going to click that link because we've already seen what that data looks like. That's exactly where I entered this data that we just looked at a moment ago. But I will instead click the Create button. And I want to show you how easy this is. The first time through here, I'm not going to accept any options. I'm just going to go straight for a result. So notice that the diagram we want to create is a basic flowchart. I'm going to browse to the folder that has process data for flowchart in it, click Open. Visio has now opened that Excel diagram. It's found some tables and it identified the correct one. So I'm just going to click Finish. I want you to see how fast this is to get from data to diagram. Let me close a couple of windows here. We don't need those at the moment. And sure enough, here is a diagram. So zoom in a little bit. We see process steps that look like log a hiring request, prepare job description, advertise open job. Let's go back to Excel. Sure enough, here we have log hiring request, prepare job description, advertise open job, and so forth. So this is a flowchart that has come directly from the data in Excel. As you noticed, I did not have to drag a single shape onto the page. Visio and Excel in combination did that for me automatically. To show you a second example, let's take this one. Here is another set of data. Starts off, looks pretty similar. In fact, it's exactly the same process. But what I want to do now is create a swim lane diagram instead of just a standard flowchart. The distinction, or the difference, I should say, is that the template for creating a swim lane diagram has two additional columns, one called function and one called phase. The function column identifies the swim lanes. So here we see, we're going to see a swim lane called business unit, one called human resources, and other more steps that happen in the business unit function, and so forth. And in the phase column, we'll see how those play out in just a second. Those phases are called new opening, interview, and onboard. The rest of the information is the same. So up at the top, you can see this is diagram 25, process data for swim lane. Let's go back to Visio. I'll start up another Visio instance here and drag it over to the correct monitor. Let's go to new and templates. And actually, because I have recently used this template, it's actually right here in my frequently used template list. So I'm just going to click it right here. Once again, I don't need the template because I've already put data in one. So let's click Create. And same thing exactly. I'm going to browse. Let's go to diagram 25 in this folder. There it is. Click Open. And Visio once again finds a table that looks like it has appropriate data inside that diagram. Inside that Excel workbook. And now I'll just click Finish. And in just as few seconds as it took to create the flowchart, we now have a swim lane diagram. So I hope you can appreciate that this is just dead simple. It requires nothing more than having data in an Excel template that's properly structured, and then Visio builds the diagram for you. Notice the two functions, business unit and human resources, are the labels for my swim lanes. And here are the phases that are referred to: the new job opening phase, the interview phase, and the onboard phase. So far, so good. I'm going to minimize these, and let's go back and take a look at a couple more bits of information, and then we'll continue with live demonstration. So when you want to create a new diagram, you can launch the diagram from one of the templates, as I suggested, or if you already happen to have Visio running and you're running Visio Plan 2, then on the Data tab, which is available in Plan 2, on the Data tab, you'll find on the left end a button that says Create from Data. That will launch the wizard from there. So you can either start a brand new diagram directly from one of the special templates, as I did, or you can go to Visio, and I'll just do that here for a second, go to the Data tab, and sure enough, here is that Create from Data button over on the left end. So two different ways to get there. Let's take a look at what the pages of the wizard that I skipped over look like. This is the one you did see, where you navigate to find the Excel file that has the data for your diagram. That's page 1 of 4, or step 1 of 4, as you see in the lower left. There's also a dialog that allows you to map the data columns for specific purposes. So which column represents the step ID, the unique ID for each step, which column represents the description, which one is the next step ID, and so forth. There's a page that allows you to manually select shapes. Normally, these will default just fine to the flowchart and swim lane diagram shapes. But if you want to, if you have a stencil of your own special shapes, Data Visualizer can actually use them. I mentioned TaskMap. We also offer a free version of TaskMap called TaskMap Lite. And over on the right side of this alternate step 3 page, you'll notice different colored shapes, different shapes for start and tasks and connectors and so forth. So I'm able to have the Data Visualizer create my kind of diagram rather than automatically creating a swim lane or a flowchart using the standard shapes. And then finally, there's step 4 of 4, where we can provide Visio with a little bit more information about how to map columns to the text that should appear on arrows and so forth. So that's the idea. Let's do that. Let's go back to Visio. I'm going to close this diagram. I'm going to go back to File, New. And this time, what I want to do is use I'll use the same data, but I'm going to do a couple of different things. Let's, pardon me, let's start with a flowchart. So here's my flowchart template, and let's step through the wizard. I'm going to browse and choose the same document that we did a moment ago. So Data Visualizer, and this is the flowchart example. So it finds the table. Now I'm going to click Next instead of Finish so we can actually go through these dialogues together. Visio has defaulted to using the columns that it found in my Excel data appropriately. So it says, do you want to use the column called Process Step ID as the process ID? And yes, I, in fact, left that default name because it lets Visio do the mapping automatically. But if your data column back in Excel, if you called this column unique ID or just ID or something that Visio didn't happen to automatically guess was the right thing, then guess what? All you have to do is drag that column name over here and drop it here, and you can just override whatever Visio thought might be appropriate. So same thing for the process description and the next step ID, or I'm sorry, the shape type. Those 3 entries are on step 2. Click Next. And here's where I can map to specific shapes. So once again, if the process shape was called task, as it is in my task map light example, I would just drag the column called task over to the appropriate box. Whoops. Let's do that again. I somehow clicked on cancel. That was not what I intended. So let's quickly do that again. Demo visualizer. So next, on step 3, we just saw, and then on step 4, we can continue just doing the mapping if we need to. If we have step IDs that are separated by a semicolon instead of a comma, we can indicate the appropriate punctuation character that's used. And then we've seen what this will do, and it will do exactly what we ask. It's created the diagram. So now, I mentioned before that the diagram is actually linked to the data. So let's see about that. Let's make a change here. I'm going to go back to the data for this diagram, and let's say that I want to insert a step. So I'm going to go to the row 9 and insert, and let's create a step 125. Yes, I can type 125. That's in between 120 and 130. And for the description, let's say that we want to post this to an internal job board. And now we need to fix up the next step IDs. For step 120, the next step is no longer 130, it's now 125. And for step 125, the following step is 130. So that's pretty easy. This is another process step. So let's choose process from the drop-down. The owner, pardon me, the owner is a recruiter. So let's add that. And then I could continue to add additional data if I wanted to. Let's just put a number here, $23 or $34. Well, we'll do that. I'm not going to worry about the dates. So we have additional data. I'm going to save that data. And now I've updated the data. I want Visio to reflect that. So let's go back to Visio. And here's a very important point. What I'm looking for at the moment is a special tab on the ribbon that allows me to interact with Data Visualizer. It's not visible right now. By the way, you may see a couple of extras. I have the developer tab turned on, and I also have a utility from a guy named Paul Heber in the UK, a wonderful collection of utilities for Visio called the Visio Super Utilities. That's what that tab is. But the tab I'm looking for is not there. Here's the key. The steps in any data visualizer created diagram are enclosed in a special Visio shape called a container. If I click on the word heading here or anywhere on the edge of the container, now you'll notice that there is a special tab here that appears under Data Tools, and it says for under Data Tools is the Design tab. And here we have several buttons, one of which says relink source data. So if I've broken the connection between my Visio diagram and the Excel data, I can relink. In my case, what I want to do is refresh the diagram. So remember, I added a step in this general vicinity here to post this new job opening to an internal job board. Let's click the refresh diagram button. And it might be because the diagram's open, or rather the workbook is open. Let me close it and let's try that again. So let's refresh diagram. And sure enough, let's see, we've got an extra step in here, post to internal job board. I can do the same thing here. In fact, I'll wait and do that again in the swim lane diagram, but I want to show you some of what's involved in customizing a swim lane diagram. Let's do that. Let's go back and take a quick look at our swim lane data. And I'm going to show you a set of data that has, for the swim lane diagram, has the functions defined, but has left the phase column blank. So we're going to have rows in our swim lane diagram that are identified by a function, but we're not going to have any phases across the diagram. let's use this data. This is file number 20. So let's go back here. We don't need this diagram any longer. Let's take the cross-functional flowchart and click Create. Let's browse to file 20 and select Open. Last time I just clicked Finish. This time we'll take Next, and the first screen, the first step here for a cross-functional flowchart is different from the regular flowchart. And that's because we need to identify which columns in our data reflect or represent the function and the phase. Again, I use the standard template. There's already a column called function and a column called phase. So Visio has no trouble guessing those names are the right ones. But as always, you can drop any column onto either of these fields if your column names happen to be different. From there, the next page is the same as it was in the flowchart. The step 4 of 5 is the same as it was in the flowchart, and the final step is the same as well. So it's really just that one page that's different for the cross-functional flowchart. Now I click Finish, and the same magic that we saw earlier will happen. So now here's this flowchart. We saw that I could change data and make that change appear in the diagram. As I suggested, let's do the opposite. And first, let me close the Excel file so we don't have a conflict, access conflict. Let's say that we realize that when we hire an employee, we need to make an ID card, we need to assign an office. But you know what? We need to contact IT in order to get a PC and equipment for this new employee. So let's add a step manually. I'm going to drag a process step over here, drop it on this line. Visio inserts it for me automatically. So from make ID card, we're now going to the blank box. From there, blank box, we're now going to assign office. And let's say that what we need to do is to contact IT. So let's do that, double click, contact IT. And if I was so inclined, I could right click, enter data, and open the shape data window and fill in some additional steps. Visio has already added a process step ID and a next step ID. I could fill in things like the dates and the costs. So maybe the start date is tomorrow, just to pick a date. So I've just entered some arbitrary data about this step. Once again, I need to select the container in which the swim lane diagram lives. So one click on the border of that selects it. On the Data Tools Design tab, now I'm going to click the button that says Update Source Data. So it says, do you want to overwrite what's already there? I'm going to say yes. And the current diagram content is being written to that Excel workbook. By the way, I hope you have some questions. There will be a few minutes toward the end, in just a few minutes from now, a few minutes for you to ask questions. Look forward to seeing what kind of thoughts or questions or ideas for how to use this capability that you might have. All right, normally it does not take this long, so I'm not quite sure what's going on here. Let's see. Let me open the diagram and see what's happened. No, it has not been updated yet. So let's see what Visio's up to here. Tell you what, I'm going to cancel it and try again. Well, you know what happens with live demos. Sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. In this case, it appears that that isn't going to work. So for the sake of argument, I'll ask you to trust me. It does work. I'll show you what it would look like. Let me open the data file and show you what would have happened is that Visio would have added a new row. So basically it would have expanded the table by one row, and it usually gives it numbers like 1798 as a step ID, and there would be my description of contact IT, and the rest of the data would have been filled in. And Visio is smart enough, in conjunction with Excel, to say, you know what, it was after make ID card, so instead of 200, this is now going to got to go to 1798, and from step 200 assign office now goes to, I'm sorry, the contact ID will go to 999. So it fills in the appropriate data and makes it all work together. So apologize for that. Don't know what that was about. Some sort of access conflict that's still going on my machine, but that's the answer to what would have happened. Let's take another look. Just to summarize what we looked at, I want you to leave you with the slides so you know where to go to get more information here. As I mentioned, if you must select the container that surrounds the diagram, either the flowchart or the swim lane diagram, in order to find the Data Tools Design tab. And it's on that Design tab where you'll find the refresh diagram if you've changed Excel, or update source data if you've changed, made changes in Visio. Next, and important point is if you want to create a custom template, and I'm not actually going to show you this because it's pretty straightforward, but you can, if you've built a template in Excel and a corresponding diagram in Visio that you've used, maybe you've used the design tab to apply themes and you've got the color scheme the way you want it, some combination of data format in Excel and Visio diagram format that you want to put together and make available to your colleagues. Once again, select the container surrounding a diagram that you've created with Data Visualizer. And then there's a button that just has a red box around it now that says Export as Template. Use that button to create a special file. This is a Visio file with the extension VTPX. That's a Visio template for process diagrams. And then you can send that diagram to your colleagues. They simply double click on it, and double clicking will open that file and install two files, a pair of files, an Excel template and a Visio template in this location. Notice that it's the custom office templates folder that resides in your My Documents folder. So it doesn't get much easier than that. Truly, as the creator, all you do is click one button and create the VTPX file, send it to folks, they double click it, and they now have an Excel template and a Visio template that work together for creating diagrams. Last thing I want to show you is how you can do some of what I've just described right inside Excel. And let's look at what you'll find in Excel. And again, this refers to the subscription versions of Excel. So this does not work with the older versions, the desktop versions of Excel. There are a pair of templates that allow you to begin in Excel and correspond to the Excel templates we've just been looking at. So those are a way to start by entering data in Excel and then use a button in Excel to launch Visio. So that's the case where you have a Visio license and you want to use Excel and Visio in much the same way I showed you, starting from Visio. Does require a subscription for both Excel and Visio Plan 2. But it works fine. You click on the Table Design tab in Excel and click Export and choose Export Table to Visio Diagram. Then there is also a an option for that does not require Visio. So let me do this. Actually, let's not use that. Let's start a new instance of Excel, excuse me. And if I type Visio, let's see what happens. That's not the right thing. I was typing in the wrong search bar. I want to go to New. And now if I want to search for process map or Visio, let's try process and see what we get here. Sure enough, here's the process map for basic flowcharts. Here's the process map for Visio flowcharts. And I can just click Create. And guess what? This will look familiar. Here's the tab that shows the instructions, the tab that shows the example, and a pre-formatted tab that I can add rows to and enter my data. What is potentially more interesting for many of you is if you have Excel but not Visio, then there is an option for you. If you launch Excel and type something like flowchart or process, as I did, you'll also notice you get these three templates that say Office Add-in Ready. These are templates for flowchart, swim lane diagram, and an organization chart. So separate category, not related to process map, but you can actually create an org chart, a Visio org chart inside Excel without needing a Visio license. So this is what the template thumbnail looks like. It is on the Insert tab where you'll find it, and you may find it already installed. If not, then choose Get Add-ins, type Visio as a search, and you may not even need to do that. The last few times I've tried it, Visio, this particular add-in was right at the top of the list, but just select Add, and you'll end up with this button. Now, in newer versions of Excel, I've seen that the Visio add-in comes pre-installed, so you don't even have to click the Get Add-ins, but it will be right here. And then all you need to do is select it, and you can use one of the Quick Start template types, and it looks like this. Let's do it. I'm going to close this, and let's go back to File, New, and we actually have the org chart one right here, but let's type process and see what we've got here. Here's the one for the cross-functional flowchart. Let's try that. Click Create. And this is what's pretty unique. Again, keep in mind that you do not need a Visio diagram, Visio license in order to create a Visio diagram here inside Excel. I'm going to choose Quick Start, and what I get is a Visio diagram right here inside Excel. And this is tied directly to this data up here. So if I change something, let's just say this is now called My Step, and I click the refresh button. If we zoom in a bit here, you'll see that this box now says My Step. If I add rows of data or add to the diagram, these two are synchronized. So here's a really powerful capability that lets you create Visio diagrams inside Excel. You don't even need a Visio license. If you want to save that flowchart or the org chart out separately as a separate Visio diagram, then yes, you do need a Visio license. But to create it, to update it, to keep it up to date inside Excel, don't require a license at all. As I predicted, this is a topic for another time. I'll show you some resources here. You can learn a little bit more from these couple of slides about using data in a diagram and where to find data, some ideas about which existing Visio diagrams already contain data in the shapes or predefined data fields, including the flowchart and the cross-functional flowchart. The Data tab is the key for unlocking all the secrets related to data. That Data tab appears in Visio Plan 2, as we know. It's also in Visio Professional. And then there are some resources. Let me run through those, and then I'm happy to take your questions. Here are a number of links for more information about Visio in general, including several online forums where there are experts like me who hang around and answer questions. The Visio enthusiasts group at LinkedIn is not only populated by people like me who just like to use Visio, but also by people from the development team at Microsoft. So you'll get straight from the horse's mouth kind of information there. Here are a couple of resources for Data Visualizer itself, and feel free to look at any of my courses or books or anything else. Copies of these slides are available. If you're interested, just send me an email and I'll leave this up here and open the floor for questions. Is there anyone who has a question about the Data Visualizer capabilities that I've shown you? Let me check in the Q&A window here and see what I've got. A question from Daly. What other tools are available for creating process maps, or is Excel the best and most convenient one? Good question, Daly. For creating flowcharts or swim lane diagrams, there are a wide variety of tools available. Visio is certainly first and foremost among them, certainly close to my heart, as you might imagine. But Lucidchart and SmartDraw, there was a Draw.io, an online service, Creately. Boy, there are probably 10 others that you can find if you look for, if you just do a general search for flowcharting tools. Visio certainly is among the leaders in the category, and it's this combination of being able to define my data in Excel and have a diagram created automatically that I find particularly powerful. When we do business process consulting projects with clients, we tend to deal with two kinds of people. And there are those folks who think graphically and want to see a picture. They want to start with a flowchart. But you know what? There's a whole category of business folks, particularly, who think and breathe in Excel. So when I work with them, I often will put the flowchart on the back burner and let them help me define their process step by step in Excel. And what's magic then is what I've shown you. I've got the data in Excel. Now I can click a button and I have instantly created a diagram. And the best thing is that even those table-oriented, Excel-oriented folks, when they see the diagram, it lights some neurons, and they might say, you know, I said that, but that step doesn't really happen next. There's another step in between. So the good news is, as you've seen, I can change in the diagram and refresh the data, or I can change the data and refresh the diagram. So it's the combination that I particularly like these days. What are the advantages of process maps? Dan asks. I could probably spend 45 minutes. In fact, I do a lot of conference presentations about process mapping. So let me give you a condensed answer to the question. And it has to do, in fact, with something I said a moment ago. There is a group of people who are more visually oriented, for whom charts of data just don't do it. The visual, having a visual diagram, a process map, in fact, unlocks their ability to understand the process. Some people just want to start that way too. As I mentioned, we'll do whiteboarding sessions where we'll just sort of map out a process, and then doing that may lead us back to data. Now we need to collect data about each step in the process. So it's the combination of the two that really is pretty powerful. So if you have more questions about that, Scott at visiostepbystep.com, I'd be happy to point you at some resources. One of the newest LinkedIn learning courses I just created is actually about flowcharting. It's sort of best practices for flowcharting and why creating flowcharts is a good idea in the first place. So if you have a LinkedIn Learning subscription, head over there and search for my last name, Helmers, and flowcharting and for flowcharts, and I think you'll find that course might be helpful. Great. I think I've got those two questions. Is there anything else that I can answer for anyone? I've got about 1 minute left. I'll hold off before I shut down, but other than that, I thank you for your time. I am. It's early enough here. I'm about to wrap up this presentation and go get some breakfast because it's that time of the morning in Boston. I hope you're all having a great conference, and if there is anything I can do for you, please use my email, scott@visiostepbystep.com. If you'd like a PDF copy of the slides, let me know that. You can also contact me on Twitter @VisProcess, and I will be happy to respond there as well. So with that, my time is up, and I thank you very much. Have a good day.